All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to the MacKids Winter 2024 preview event. You can check out the full title list we're discussing today at the link in the chat. My name is Elisha Lobos, and I'm the Associate Marketing Manager on the MacKids School and Library team.
And I am Mary Van Aken, and I'm the Director of School and Library Marketing.
We are excited to give you an overview of our Winter 2024 list of titles, including picture books, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult titles from all of our imprints at Macmillan's Children's Publishing Group. Our imprints include Feiwel and Friends, Farrar Straus Giroux Books for Young Readers, Henry Holt Books for Young Readers, For a Second, Roaring Brook Press, Neon Squid, and Odd Dot. As you may have heard, we are also very excited to have a few special guests live with us later in the event. A truly talented Caldecott honor author and illustrator Elisha Cooper and Emily Feinberg, executive editor of Roaring Brook Press. Later on, we'll also have Adam Pottle and illustrator Ziyue Chen in conversation with Connie Shu, editorial director at Roaring Brook Press, to discuss their beautifully detailed picture book, Butterfly on the Wind. And a few housekeeping notes before we begin. In the chat, you'll see a link for a full list of titles we're discussing today. This link was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom about an hour ago. To download it, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the title list by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. In the digital review copy column for picture books and graphic novels, you can click through to read a digital review copy on issue. Please do not share these links as they are to be used for review purposes only. And in the digital review copy column for middle grade and young adult titles, you'll find a link to request the book on NetCali where available. As we only have 60 minutes to present, this is not our full list of titles. Please subscribe to our MacKids School and Library e-newsletter and follow us on Twitter at MacKidsSL to keep up to speed with all of our new and upcoming releases. If you are live tweeting today, please use the hashtag MacKidsPreview. Mary is going to drop some links in the chat so you can see them.
Great. Now on to some technical details. And Beth Pruitt, I am seeing that you do not have access to the title list. I will check on that. Just give me 1 second to share the technical details, and then I will make sure that is fixed. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received on Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the materials by copying the URL on the screen. The audience is in listen-only mode. But you are welcome to, we will answer any questions you have. So on the bottom of the screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions during the event. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar. From there, you can select the show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size and captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. Today's event will be recorded, and the recording will be shared with you after the event. Finally, we expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the advisors, be removed. And finally, if you have any trouble with downloading any of our title list, you can always also contact Booklist at webinars@booklistonline.com.
Next slide. All right, first up, I am proud to introduce Butterfly on the Wind by Adam Pottle and illustrated by Ziyue Chen. This is an interview that was pre-recorded with Connie Shu. As editorial director of Roaring Brook Press, she has edited Caldecott Medal winner The Adventures of Beagle, Caldecott honor book Leave Me Alone, Siebert Medal winner Fry Bread, and the bestsellers After the Fall, Be Kind, and the Friends graphic novels. She's also the editor of both Bomb, the graphic novel, and the National Book Award nominated A First Time for Everything. Connie was born in Taiwan, grew up in Alabama, and now currently lives in Brooklyn. Now Connie will introduce our creators. Next slide. Mary is now pulling up the video interview.
Sorry, y'all, having a slight tech issue. Give me one moment.
Today, I'm honored to be moderating this conversation with author Adam Pottle and illustrator Ziyue Chen, the two enormously talented creators of the book. Born deaf and raised in a hearing family, Adam Pottle is an award-winning Canadian writer across multiple genres, including the play The Black Drum, the world's first all-deaf musical. He has a PhD in English literature and has taught English and creative writing for nearly 20 years. He lives in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, with his wife, Deborah. Born deaf and raised on the sunny island of Singapore, Ziyue Chen lives with her husband and her two darling children. Her life goal has been to have an emotional connection with those who view her work, and she's achieved this goal time and again with the books she's illustrated for children. Adam and Ziyue, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you also to our ASL interpreter, Erica. So, Adam, what inspired you to write Butterfly on the Wind?
Like Connie. Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't have books like this when I was a kid. I never saw books about deaf kids, behaving in exciting ways, or having bombastic, exciting adventures. And I grew up a fan of Calvin and Hobbes, and I never saw deaf kids behaving like that. And so I wanted to write a book for my younger self. And another thing that inspired me when writing this book is that whenever I see deaf people in a group and whenever they're signing, then I find that they generate their own wind. They generate this wind that, while it may feel gentle, it could move mountains. It could rearrange rivers. And I wanted to write a story that captured the power and the beauty of sign language. And that became Butterfly on the Wind.
Beautiful story, captured our hearts immediately. And Ziyue, clearly it captured your heart as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how you felt when you saw the text and what inspired you to want to sign on and illustrate it?
So the first time that I read this story, I knew immediately that I wanted to illustrate this because I felt the same exact way growing up. I never read any books that had any deaf characters or any sign language characters that felt like resonated with me and that I could join in on their story. So I know that sign language is beautiful and it can unite people, and that's really nice for children to read that. And so when you interact with deaf people or the deaf community, you can understand that the sign language does bring people together. And also, I like how Adam uses the butterfly as a beautiful metaphor. And it really signifies that no one is alone in their struggles.
I mean, butterflies are beautiful to look at, but they're also, as you mentioned, they're a very powerful metaphor in this story. So Adam, can you speak a little bit more about your choice to incorporate butterflies? How did the butterfly become the main focus of your story?
Well, the majority of butterfly species are deaf. And for that reason, butterflies are often considered a symbol of the power and the beauty of deaf culture. And I kind of wanted to take that idea and play with it and see if I could turn it into kind of an international story, so to speak. And it seemed to me, and that's another thing that I didn't see when I was a kid, was if I ever happened to see a deaf person in a television show or in a movie, they were always isolated. I never saw a deaf community. I never saw multiple deaf people on screen. And that was disconcerting to me. And so I wanted to use this symbol of butterflies as a means of uniting and illustrating deaf community.
Yeah, this is what, in addition to the butterfly metaphor in the story, it's also a very global story, and I felt that global connection with working on this book with you in Canada and Ziyue, you in Singapore, and the Macmillan team in the US. So Ziyue, this text gave you the opportunity to show various geographic settings. So can you tell us a little bit about your choices in, illustrating the different scenes? And also, do you have a favorite place or favorite, scene from the book?
Yeah, well, when I read the story, it showed all these different settings, and it was very straightforward. So, for example, there's one line that said, Abby sits with her grandmother in an old cabin in the mountains. And so she showed, so showing like the cold mountain, just the vivid language gave me the visuals for the landscape. And then also the ocean scene. The story shows a hint to the setting, so I knew what to draw based on that. And my favorite place, or my favorite thing, was how people supported and encouraged one another through sign language, no matter where they were in the world. So I found that to be really comforting. Yeah, I really loved that.
Adam, it's because of your vivid writing. It does a lot all at once. It shows different families, relationships, connections, and you bring us all around the world. So I feel like there's so much already in the story, and our great hope was to also bring on an artist who is deaf and fluent in sign language. We wanted to bring that even more forward in your picture book. So can you share how it felt to connect with Ziyue? And do you have any favorite spreads that she's illustrated?
Well, first of all, with Ziyue, I feel like we won the lottery because her work was absolutely perfect. Her illustration style was absolutely perfect for the story, because I quickly discovered that she has this whimsical radiance to her work that just it just fit the story perfectly, and I can't imagine any other artist illustrating this story. And in terms of a favorite spread or a favorite image from the book, it's probably the one in the middle where the butterflies are attempting to cross the ocean, and they're having difficulty because they don't have the momentum. Like the wind at that point has run out, and it's they don't have the strength to get over the ocean. But nearby, there's there are people on a boat who are celebrating, and they help the butterflies along. And I think Ziyue kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, this idea of community and support and helping each other along.
Absolutely. And Ziyue, you did such a beautiful job incorporating the sign language into the visuals and showing their power. Can you share a little bit about how you brought that aspect into the art, and if there were any surprises or challenges along the way?
Yeah, well, I would act out, actually. actually the signs and film myself and use the emotions. So I could see myself in the videos and see, sort of what was an accurate representation and what wasn't. So I had a perfect reference for when I was illustrating. So I thought that was very important to show the emotions to the readers so that they would be able to feel it. So that was very important for me and for my work to connect with the audience, for them to be able to really feel the story. And the challenging part for me was to make sure that the signing was clear and it was legible. The person reading it would be able to understand what the sign was and see the emotions as well.
You did a beautiful job. I mean, I know that a lot of artists have a hard time drawing hands to begin with. So the added layer of clear communication is certainly, and exemplifies the art form. So beautifully done. And thank you for that. And so Adam, coming back to you, in your author's note, you discuss how butterflies first became meaningful to you when you saw Mothra in the Godzilla movies. And I thought, wow, I did not expect that at all, because butterflies are often associated with being delicate and fragile. So can you share a little bit about why Mothra and why did that character speak to you so much?
Well, that was part of the inspiration. Another part of the inspiration for the story, because at the same time that I was thinking about, the wind that deaf people generate with their sign language, I also started to think of, what else generates wind. There are hurricanes, there are tornadoes, but I grew up a fan of the Godzilla movies, and I started to think about the wind that Mothra generated whenever she would fly over Tokyo. And it was, you said it perfectly, that Mothra is a being of strength and a being of power. And the thing is, those things are not necessarily associated with deaf people either. Mm-hmm. Deaf people are often seen as innocent, as naive, as fragile, delicate, and it's just not true. Deaf people are powerful, beautiful beings, and that's something that I hope comes through in the story.
And so, for you, you're Mothra. That's your inner symbol. And so, Ziyue, do you have something similar, something that inspires you?
So do you mean in the story or outside the story?
Just for yourself, for Adam, it's butterflies. For you, what gives you joy? What reflects you?
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, I would say the word would be a word, and that would be resilience. Mm. And the reason why is because resilience it's more of, how I live my life. And, it's about a state of mind. Mm-hmm. I think is really important.
And this story is about resilience. It's about finding courage and feeling the support of others. But ultimately, it's about Abby and her first steps into her performance, and that kind of comes full circle. So this is so beautiful. And you guys have created winds of change already with this book. Working on this has inspired my assistant, Nika Orejaron, to learn ASL. So thank you so much for what you've done for just one reader. Imagine when many, many more come to the book. So thank you both so much for joining us today for the preview and for talking with us. And we're so excited to create more winds of change through the hands of librarians and educators.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you to Connie, Ziyue, and Adam for that conversation. And thank you all for listening in. There is a link in the title list for you to preview this picture book, so please check that out. You can read the entire picture book on your screen. Now I'm going to launch into our picture book previews. Next slide, please. You'll have to go forward a few. Oh, there we are. Next slide. Perfect. Before I begin previewing our winter 24 picture books, I wanted to give a shout out to a book that was just announced earlier this fall and is publishing in December. We truly could not get this to bookshelves fast enough. Next slide. From the musicians and viral TikTok creators of If I Were a Fish, Karuk and Olivia Barton comes a picture book adaptation of their silly song illustrated by the amazing Mike Corrado with a serious message for anyone who's ever had to deal with the highs and lows of the internet. Mike Corrado's illustrations really shine here. Next slide. We're adding a link in the chat so you can listen to this song. If you do not know it yet, I promise it will be stuck in your head all day. Next slide. We Are Golden, 27 Groundbreakers Who Changed the World by Ziyue Chen and Sophie Diao. Throughout history and to this day, people of Asian descent have been at the forefront of artistic brilliance, scientific advancement, and athletic excellence. This is a board book, so for the youngest readers, written by Eva and illustrated by Sophie, the New York Times bestselling team behind I Am Golden from last year, which offers a fresh collection of groundbreakers from Sandra Oh to Bruce Lee to Michelle Kwan. This is perfect for every young reader's very first library. Next slide. Oh, and next slide, please. One more. Thank you. Coretta, the autobiography of Coretta Scott King, written by Coretta Scott King with the Reverend Dr. Barbara Reynolds, illustrated by the Equa Holmes, is adapted from Coretta's adult memoir, My Life, My Love, My Legacy. This story is thought-provoking and unforgettable in every possible way. In a moment where critical race theory is being vehemently debated nationwide, Coretta's words are needed now more than ever to teach kids the importance of equality, civil liberties, and personal activism. Next slide. With the power of love emphasized on every single page, this is a book that is as necessary as it is poignant, providing a healthy dose of history as well as sage wisdom. This is a story that will grow with kids as they become young adults and eventually leaders in their own right. Next slide. And of course, Caldecott honoree Equa Holmes's art is exceptional. This project was her first opportunity to illustrate a historical figure story written in their own words. She remembers when she was a young girl, she looked at Coretta Scott King and was struck by how beautiful she was. Now as an adult, she fully understands the depth of that beauty, the depth of that courage and bravery. She's depicted that depth exceptionally well here, and we're thrilled to share this account of Coretta's life separate and apart from her life as the wife of Martin Luther King Jr. Next slide, please. And if you are subscribed to our newsletter, you will have an opportunity in January to request a beautiful art print. We're going to drop our link to subscribe in the chat. Next slide. I am very excited to introduce a stunning debut picture book by Deanne Wiley. Next slide. In 2020, Henry Holt editor extraordinaire Mark Podesta came across an illustration on Instagram that immediately captured him, that you can see here. Her work captures these beautiful day-in-the-life moments that are at once so simple and also so transportive. Next slide. She's become much beloved online, and now 4 years after Mark spotted that fateful Instagram post, we are thrilled to publish her debut. Next slide. What do you think of when you think about home? The worn, comfy armchair that's perfect for reading, the soft, plush carpeting that's squished between your toes, the hours spent doing choreography in front of the mirror in your bedroom? Or do you think about the people that fill that home, that love and warmth that gives it its name? This book celebrates all of it. Homegrown is a touching and stunningly illustrated ode to homes and loved ones that make us who we are. Next slide, please. Threads, Lada's Ukrainian Shirt by Lena Maslow. Threads has that perfect mix of timely, weighty subject matter, resonant text, and art that keeps catching your eye, encouraging you to linger on every single spread. This is a lightly fictionalized account of author Lena's grandparents' experience of the 1932 to 33 Ukrainian famine genocide. There are people still alive today living through Russia's war on Ukraine who survived this famine genocide. This history influences our experiences today. In Threads, next slide. In Threads, Zlata's mother gifts her a hand-embroidered blouse for her birthday. When Russian communists come to collect Zlata's family's grain, they also ransack their home, taking precious personal items, including their Bible and this blouse. They also take Zlata's father. As winter sets in, Zlata and her mother and Zlata's best friend fight to survive by foraging for and sharing food. While millions of Ukrainians didn't make it, Zlata and Lena's family story ends with hope and friendship. Nonfiction back matter includes further information on the famine genocide, the USSR, traditional Ukrainian crafts like embroidery, and a bibliography. Lena also speaks of her immigration to the United States from Ukraine in 1985 after fleeing the Soviet Union. Next slide. When I tell you, I was absolutely shocked when reading There's No Such Thing as Vegetables by Kyle Lukoff and Andrea Surumi. I am not exaggerating. I've traveled through my entire life on the same page as our young protagonist, Chester, who, upon visiting his local community garden, learned some disturbing news. There's no such thing as vegetables. It's true. What we think of as vegetables are really just a variety of different kinds of plants. Tomatoes are fruits. Kale is a leaf. Broccoli is a flower. Though Chester and I both protest, he walks away with a wealth of knowledge about plants and constructs, social constructs, and taxonomy. Thanks to the best supporting cast, the lively, sassy veggies, next slide, readers walk away with valuable lessons about questioning the world around them, making an effort to never assume and to wonder sincerely about categories. Next slide. Which ones are important? Which ones don't really matter? Which ones help? Which ones hurt? And asking those questions can also help you change them, hopefully for the better. Next slide. We're so thrilled to have this book from Newbery Honor winning 2-time Stonewall winning a National Book Award finalist, Kyle Lukoff. And this project is just next level. Introducing our next picture book, Memory Garden, is the wonderful mother-daughter dream team, Zohreh Ghahremani and Susie Ghahremani. Next slide.
I'm Zohreh Ghahremani, and I'm here to speak about my first picture book, Memory Garden. I wrote this book mainly because I wanted to tell a story, but it became a unique experience when my daughter illustrated it.
I'm Susie Ghahremani, I'm Zohreh's daughter, and working on this book together was a special experience because we each get to share our perspectives. My mom is an immigrant who left her country behind, only to see it forever changed, reflecting on joyful memories of her childhood that I have no documentation of. And meanwhile, my experience as a first-generation American, imagining what her country would have looked like.
I feel good about having told this story. All immigrants have stories to tell. In that sense, the book becomes universal. But what makes me feel good about it is that Susie, who has never been to Iran, managed to, in her imagination, see everything exactly as it was. And so here I feel success in having passed that story to another generation.
Our hope is that children of any background can identify how there are shared experiences across their cultures and between their generations, ways that we can learn from each other and celebrate each other through storytelling with each other.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Zohreh and Susie. Next slide, please. See a little bit of the art here. And next slide. I Am Both by Carissa Green. I am so excited to share author-illustrator Carissa's moving debut picture book, I Am Both. This is based on the true story of the author's family's escape to America on the last commercial flight out of Vietnam, 6 days before the fall of Saigon. For Hurong, life in Saigon, Vietnam is mostly normal, or as normal as it can be while a war is going on. But when her family decides to get on that last flight out of the country to build a new life in America, Hurong worries about missing her home. Next slide. Through new friends and old tradition, Hurong learns that no matter where we go, the smell of home and taste of love can happen anywhere, as long as we have our family. Next slide. Complete with educational back matter, I Am Both is a hopeful, timely story full of gorgeous art. Next slide. By Land by Sea by Renee Spencer, illustrated by Rodolfo Montalvo. Opening this picture book gives you that indescribable feeling of heading off on a new adventure. This picture book by newcomers and husband-wife team Renee and Rodolfo is a bilingual story about two children who are on an epic journey thrown together by the elements. Next slide. These two come together and eventually switch places. One is stranded, one is on a boat. They switch places, and by a twist of fate, they end up finding their way back to each other and make it back to civilization. This is next slide, a perfect book for anyone who likes adventure tales and strong stories about connection across cultures and learning vocabulary in a super accessible way. It feels fresh and classic all at the same time. Plus, there's a gorgeous gatefold and a die-cut cover that make the title feel extra special. Next slide. We don't have time to get to more picture books today, but please, go through our title list. Next slide. Scroll through these, Ryan. We have so many amazing picture books to preview, and I highly recommend checking them all out. And with that, we will move on to middle grade.
Excellent. Yes, thank you, Mary. Now I'm going to buzz about some tremendous middle grade titles. Next slide. Okay, great. Next slide. Starting off with The Girl Who Sang, a Holocaust memoir of hope and survival. And before Estelle Nadel was Estelle, she was Ina Feld, born in 1934 to a Jewish family in a small Polish town. Her earliest childhood memories were bright and full of song. Her mother was her best friend. She idolized her big sister, and she was watched over by her three older brothers. After the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939, the next 3 years would be whittled down to yellow stars, being banned from school, ghettos, and Jews disappearing. Next slide. In 1942, Ina and her family were separated. They depended on their neighbors for nearly everything. Ina and her brothers spent 2 years in hiding until Poland was liberated by the Russians in 1944, and they had survived the loss of their mother, their father, and their eldest brother and sister. They escaped execution from the same jailhouse their mother had died in. When the war was over and they were finally free, Ina would have to relearn how to walk and how to sing. Next slide. The Girl Who Sang is the illustrator's debut graphic novel, and she's taken great care with Estelle's story, not shying away from the violence or heartbreak while still saturating the pages with an undeniable innocence and strength. This is a stunning graphic memoir about loss, survival, and the horrors of war, but it's also about family, love, forgiveness, and what happens when fighting is over. Estelle is 88 years old and still flying all over the country telling her story. Next slide. Now we have Maybe It's a Sign by E.L. Shen. This is an uplifting middle grade novel, but I want E.L. Shen to speak a little bit more about this herself. Next slide.
Hi, I'm E.L. Shen, and I'm the author of Maybe It's a Sign, a story from FSG that comes out in January about 13-year-old Freya Jun's son, whose father has recently passed away. Freya's dad really believed in Chinese superstitions, and as a result, Freya thinks her father is sending her signs from beyond the grave that are telling her what to do. The only thing is, sometimes Freya doesn't want to follow those signs. This story also features complicated middle school friendships, an interesting sister dynamic, and an enemies to crushes romance. I've written 3 books so far, and this story is by far my most personal yet, and that's because I also lost my dad when I was about Freya's age. I really struggled to figure out who I was without him, and so with this book I wanted to ask the questions: how do you form your identity outside of your parents' expectations and approval and support? And what does it mean to carve your own path while still honoring your parents and letting go of the guilt and anxiety that comes with not knowing whether your parent would approve? I really hope that this story is both a mirror and a window to any child who has lost a loved one that is close to them, and to anyone who is on the brink of figuring out who they are.
Okay, now we have The Sixth Extinction. This is the young reader's adaptation of the 2014 New York Times bestselling Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name. The climate countdown clock in Union Square predicts that in less than 6 years, we will reach the point of no return for climate change. It serves as a physical reminder that every day, every minute, we are barreling towards irreversible catastrophe. We've all heard so much about climate change, and we know how important it is, but specs like this make it hard to wrap our heads around what exactly is going on. Culbert's Sixth Extinction lays out for readers what's at stake for our planet unless we make some big changes. From the first extinction that occurred about 450 million years ago to the last millions of years of our planet's history, this book is a sobering look at where we've been as a species and where we'll be going. Honest, accessible, and compelling, it introduces readers to the Holocene extinction. It's an exploration of our current era defined by human activity and its effects. Elizabeth's work is crucial to understanding what an event like this means for us, and more importantly, how young people can help stop it. The Young Readers Edition will feature photos from the adult book and new diagrams, infographics, and illustrations for even greater context. We're excited to share this with you all. Okay, next slide. And hot off the heels of The Midnight Children, which Colby Sharp called perfect, Dan Gemeinhart has made his triumphant return to the world of Coyote with his new standalone companion, Coyote Lost and Found. Many young and older readers alike have asked Dan to write another Coyote story, and he's delivered with a new adventure about finding family, letting go, and a missing book that might be the key to it all. The beginning of the book throws you right back into the father-daughter relationship we loved before, but Coyote's growing up. Her dad is embracing change, and it looks like these two will have to pack up the bus one more time in an effort to lay some things to rest. It all starts when Coyote finds her mother's ashes in the old bus. And though there are still pangs of grief, the book also explores hope, unfolding emotion, and the courage to make space for new things. Dan is so excited to bring even more readers to this world, so don't forget to request a copy of this on NetGalley. Next slide. And we have Olivetti. This is a heartfelt debut of middle grade, told from the unique vantage points of a witty typewriter and an introverted boy, and it's truly something special. Being a typewriter is not as easy as it looks. Surrounded by books, notorious attention hogs, and recently replaced by a computer, Olivetti has been forgotten by the Brindle family, the family he's lived with for years. The Brindles are busy humans, apart from 12-year-old Ernest, who would rather be left alone with his collection of Oxford English dictionaries. The least they could do was remember Olivetti once in a while, since he remembers every word they've ever typed on him. But it's a thankless job keeping memories alive. Olivetti gets a rare glimpse of action from Ernest's mom, Beatrice, his used to be most frequent visitor, only for her to drop him off at Heartland Pawn Shop and leave him behind. When Olivetti learns Beatrice has mysteriously gone missing afterward, he believes he can help find her. He breaks the only rule of the typewriterly code and types back to Ernest, divulging Beatrice's memories stored inside him. Their search takes them across San Francisco, chasing clues and maybe committing a few misdemeanors. As Olivetti spills out the past, Ernest is forced to face what he and his family have been running from, the everything that happened. Only by working together will they find Beatrice, belonging, and the parts of themselves they've lost. Allie Millington first wrote Olivetti on her own antique typewriter, who turned out to have an awful lot to say. Next slide. Okay, comics enthusiasts, you have not much longer to wait because George O'Connor is back with a new series after wrapping up his formidable 12-book Olympian series, which has become a staple of any self-respecting Greek myths collection, classroom, or bedroom bookshelf. George now turns his considerable powers to the Norse gods, and his first volume is devoted to Odin. Next slide. For this new saga, George is pushing into a slightly different aesthetic and storytelling mood, more gritty and grimy. The Greek gods are often beautiful or powerful, not so with their Scandinavian counterparts, and it makes for juicy, turbulent, and even tragic storytelling. There are 4 volumes planned in the series. The protagonists are still being talked out, but there's a good chance Loki will get a book, so cross your fingers. Next slide. George's Olympians totaled almost 1,000 pages, and by every indication, those are an evergreen series. So we know George's extraordinary research shines here, and we're hoping to see the same evergreen series in a whole new pantheon. Next slide. Okay, we have Continental Drifter. This is Kathy MacLeod's debut, and this is a graphic memoir that tells the story of her growing up in Bangkok with her Thai mother and American father. Kathy is a Luk Kung, or mixed race kid, and she doesn't feel like she belongs in Thailand. She counts the days till summer vacation when her family travels for 24 hours to arrive in a tiny seaside town in Maine. Next slide. Kathy loves Maine's natural beauty and American culture, the sitcoms, the shopping malls, the candy, but she still struggles to fit in. She doesn't look like the other kids in rural New England, and it's even worse at summer camp. Everyone keeps mixing her up with the only other Asian girl there. Kathy just wants to find a place where she truly belongs, but she's not sure if it's in America, Thailand, or anywhere. Next slide. Kathy's art style is charming and simple, almost Wimpy Kid-esque, and Continental Drifter does use a diary as a framing device in the story. At the beginning of the book, she gets a diary for Christmas, and each chapter starts with one of her diary entries. But what really makes this book so special is Kathy's voice. She perfectly captures what it's like to feel alienated in the country you're living in, or even within your own family, and she breaks that down into language that kids can relate to. Continental Drifter is for readers who like contemporary fiction that grapples with identity, belonging, and a sense of home, such as Pie in the Sky and Stargazing. Next slide. And we have one more special middle grade preview from a guest, and Amra is actually going to tell you a little bit about her story through this video. Next slide.
As a young Bosniak Bosnian Muslim girl, coming of age in the 3 years leading up to the Bosnian genocide, I was a witness to the unimaginable violence which aimed to eradicate my people, my family, my home. When I came to my new home, the United States of America, I thought that I had escaped the pain caused by hate. But just as Bosnia was hurting in the 1990s, America is hurting today. So where can we look for hope? I look back in this memoir to the unforgettable 3 summers before the Bosnian genocide that instilled a lifelong resilience to hate in me. At the onset of the book, a family tragedy led to my grief, but the arrival of my cousins, Jana and Vedrena, gave me the chance to see the world anew in my own identity as a story, not a category. As a professor at Columbia University who has visited more than 200 schools to work with educators on preventing hate, I continue to witness students seeking to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to belong. As a storyteller who has drawn on my childhood summers as a lifelong source of my resilience to hate, I wish for nothing more but for 3 summers to do for students across America what it did for me, to inspire humanity and to remind us all that each and every child has a place in our libraries, in our classrooms, and in the shared story of our America.
Such a beautiful video. Okay, and our final title for middle grade, this is Witch Hunt by Andrea Ballas and Elizabeth Levy, illustrated by Tim Foley. The 1950s were not so different from our current time. We were in an epic standoff with Russia, and back at home, liberals and conservatives were fighting over who was more American instead of banding together to protect the country from foreign enemies. In Witch Hunt, Levy and Ballas explore through innovative screenplay format this era in which a senator with too much power ultimately began to hunt down whoever he deemed not American enough. In what has now become seen as a blatant era of political propaganda, Senator McCarthy and his House Committee on Un-American Activities began gathering, punishing, imprisoning, and in some cases executing American citizens with little to no evidence of wrongdoing. As is typically the case, most of those persecuted Americans were either first or second generation immigrants, Jewish, Black, or politically diverse from the ruling class. If you love The West Wing or any book by Steve Sheinkin, you're really going to love Witch Hunt, an outstanding, one-of-a-kind narrative that is sure to give you a new perspective on what you think you know about American history. And we have several more middle grade titles that we are just not able to get to today, but if you check out NetGalley or our title list, you'll be able to see them. And I'll pass it over to Mary for YA.
Great, thank you, Elise. First up on our YA list is Lunar New Year Love Story, and I think Jean, Luan Yang, and Luan Pham need no introduction. They are an absolute powerhouse team here. And while Jean is billed as the author and Luan as the illustrator, This is a collaboration in the truest sense of the word. Lunar New Year love story features Valentina, named after Valentine's Day, the day her parents fell in love, which is why it used to be her favorite holiday until she learns a terrible secret about her family and her vision of true love is shattered. Then the ghost of St. Valentine appears before her and gives her a challenge. Either she finds true love or she can live a loveless but painless life forever. Turns out she's not ready to give up. This story has all of the trappings of a classic rom-com, an enemies to lovers storyline, heated chemistry between our leads, heartfelt confessions that bring them closer, and even a mad dash to be together at the end. We love this rom-com highlights the variety of cultures that celebrate Lunar New Year and how distinctive they are, melding Vietnamese, Taiwanese, and Korean nuances in a way that feels fresh, modern, and real. This is a collaboration you do not want to miss. Next slide. Unstoppable, my journey from world champion to athlete, time by Maggie Nichols. In 2016, on the verge of achieving her lifelong goal of competing in the Olympics, Maggie Nichols shocked the world by revealing that her USAG doctor, Larry Nassar, had been habitually grooming and sexually abusing herself and other athletes under his care. Maggie was the first athlete to go public, and what followed was an investigation that revealed a terrifying pattern of abuse and a massive cover-up by one of the world's most respected sports institutions. In sharing her story now, both then and now, Maggie demonstrates incredible strength and resilience. Unstoppable felt like the perfect title for a woman who has proven time and again that she could not and would not be stopped, both in her journey toward justice and in her athletic career. Next slide. A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal. New York Times bestselling author and a Forbes magazine pick for 30 influential people under 30, Hafsa won over readers with her debut, We Hunt the Flame. She is back with a brand new standalone book in the same world as her previous novels, and readers can expect the same breakneck pace, spectacular world building, and steamy romance. Once again, Hafsa is exploring big universal themes in this book through a lens of a high-stakes adventure. A Tempest of Tea takes on colonialism, prejudice, and found family. She also offers a surprising, subversive, and incredibly cool take on vampires that only she could pull off. It's also a highly personal story for Hafsa. At its heart, it's about accepting every part of yourself, especially the part society at large might view with hate. Next slide. Daughter of the Bone Forest by Jasmine Skye. It always brings us great joy to announce a debut author, and Jasmine Skye is without a doubt a remarkable new voice in YA. Her debut is a queer normative dark fantasy that will appeal to fans of the flourishing romantasy genre. Rosie is a bone familiar. She can shift into a variety of animals, including the powerful and dangerous bone wolf. Shaw is a princess known as Death's heir and the most powerful bone witch in the kingdom. Reluctantly bound by fate, Rosie and Shaw find themselves reluctantly drawn together. This first book in a new series checks off all the marks for me. There's dark academia, growing political tension, bone magic, bonded pairs, and a queer romance. You can also expect an exploration of destiny and consent, class inequality, and intergenerational trauma. If you're a fan of fantasy, this is a debut to get behind. Next slide. The Baker and the Bard by Fern Haupt. Now, if you're a fantasy fan, but you prefer your fantasy to be of the cottagecore variety, please look no further than The Baker and the Bard, my new favorite YA graphic novel by debut author-artist Fern Haupt. This sweet and oh-so-cozy fantasy adventure about two friends who set off on an errand to pick magic mushrooms only to be drawn into a quest involving giant, fluffy caterpillars and their mysterious fae caretaker. So the story is mostly about our young adventurers' quest to save the caterpillars. There are also hints of a sweet queer romance developing between them, as well as a subplot of one of the main characters coming to their own identity as a non-binary person. Fern's soft watercolor palette lends a soothing touch to their adorable artwork. Next slide. While appropriate for YA readers, this book also reads down beautifully for older middle grade readers. So this is meant for YA, but reads great in middle grade as well. So anyone who's looking for a gentle romance and a fun adventure. Next slide. And next slide. I have one word for Vanessa Lay's debut, The Last Blood Carver. Lush. Reading this fantasy debut with a medical magic system, I felt completely into the lush Vietnam-inspired fantasy world. It also spoke to my cinder-loving heart with its integration of mechanics into the fantasy and romance that any Marissa Meyer fan would fall for instantly. As in the industrial city of Thumis, 17-year-old Nika is auctioned off to an aristocratic family seeking to help capture their father's murderer. But Nika holds a secret of her own. She's a blood carver, a descendant of powerful healers with the ability to manipulate the human body with just a touch. As with the best fantasies, nothing is as it seems, and Nika soon discovers that evil here runs much deeper than one man's murder. This is the kind of read that leaves you questioning your own definitions of good and evil. Next slide. Ignacio Iggy Garcia is an Ohio-born Colombian-American teen living his best life. After bumping into Marisol and her coffee at school, Iggy's world is spun around, but Marisol has too much going on to be bothered by the likes of Iggy. She has school, work, family, and the uphill battle getting her legal papers. Next slide. As Iggy stresses over how to get Marisol to like him, his grandfather comes to the rescue. But the thing is, not only is Abuelito dead, but he also gives terrible love advice, the worst. And so with his ghost Abuelito's meddling, Iggy's life begins to unravel as he sets off on a journey of self-discovery. Next slide. One thing I love about this book is that it comes from a different angle to many first-generation kid stories. Iggy already starts off fully assimilated. We have this all-American boy in a sense that he is still searching for his place in his family, his school, his community, and ultimately, as the political climate in America changes during the 2016 election, his country. Next slide. Where Sleeping Girls Lie. Farida Abike Mires made her entrance to the YA scene in 2021 with Ace of Spades, her absolute thrill ride of a novel, and that went on to win an Edgar Award and Morris Award nominations, and won an NAACP Image Award. She's back with yet another contemporary mystery set in a school with quite a few skeletons in the closet. Similarly, there's so much going on beneath the surface of this thriller. The book explores the prevalence of rape culture and the ways institutions protect some at the detriment of others. This novel does not disappoint. Next slide. I'm just going to go quickly through my next two books. So we want to make sure we get to our last special guest. But truly, if you're a fantasy reader, there's really something for everyone on our winter list. Song of the Six Realms is yet another amazing, fantastic book in which our character needs to help save her country from an impending war. And really, it's another beautiful, lush book from Judy Lin. And next slide, please. Dear Wendy, I cannot stop without calling out Dear Wendy. In this debut dual point of view young adult contemporary story, two college students start these Instagram accounts to give relationship advice, and ultimately they're brought together as they explore their own identities. I think this is one of those books where you might expect romance, but that's not what this is. This is about two characters who are aromantic, asexual, and really I think that it's such a needed book on shelves. Next slide, please. We have so many great YA books to read, but let's skip forward to our last special guest, Elisha Cooper and Emily Feinberg. I am so tickled to introduce you to Emily Feinberg, who is an executive editor at Roaring Brook Press. She's edited books including the Caldecott honor-winning Big Cat, Little Cat by Elisha Cooper, Eisner Award-nominated graphic novel Go With The Flow, and Jane Against the World by the incredible late Karen Blumenthal, among others. She's thrilled to work on her third book, Emma Full of Wonders, with Elisha Cooper, her third book with Elisha. Elisha is the author and illustrator who has received a Caldecott honor for Big Cat, Little Cat, and his following book, River, won the 2020 Robin Smith Picture Book Prize. One of his earlier books, Dance, was a New York Times Best Illustrated Children's Book of the Year, and Beach won the Society of Illustrators Gold Medal. In 2016, he was awarded a Sendak Fellowship. His essays and sketchbooks have appeared in the sports section of the New York Times, and he currently lives with his wife, daughter, and cats in New York City. Over to you, Emily and Elisha.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all so much for coming to our Librarian preview. I'm Emily Feinberg, as Mary said, executive editor at Roaring Brook Press, and I am thrilled to introduce you all to Elisha Cooper. I've been lucky enough to work with Elisha on 3, soon 4 books, and I have to say that it has just been absolute torture. Elisha's favorite thing to do is to make readers of all ages cry with his powerfully simple storytelling and pitch-perfect emotional resonance. In fact, I would say he's practically gleeful when he hears one of his books has brought an adult, or a child for that matter, to tears. And his new book, Emma, Full of Wonders, is no exception. In it, we follow Emma, a very large dog with lots of little dreams. As her days fill up and move on one after another, Emma ponders the dreams and wonders if they will ever come true. Then, in a surprising twist, Emma's dreams do come true in the most unexpected way. Filled with moments of joy, imagination, comfort, and true surprise, Emma, Full of Wonders, will stay with you for a long time and hopefully satisfy Elisha's insatiable appetite for tears all at once. And now I am introducing you to Elisha.
Oh my goodness, I can't follow that, but thank you so much, Emily. Okay, so when I get stuck, I don't know what to do with a project or anything in life, and when I need inspiration, I often get on my bike and I go around the city. Like just this morning, I went up to Central Park, which is that way, and actually it was totally unhelpful. It was too pretty of a day, but often when I go around New York, I find something. And a couple of years ago, around 3 years ago, I biked over the Williamsburg Bridge on this cold, rainy day, and I was trying to figure out this kind of a turn in a project I was working on. And I went down to the river, and it was rainy and it was windy, and maybe it was just, I just felt porous and open, and I was looking at the waves, and this solution came to me. It's about actually a different project. Actually, it had to do with librarians, but I was so excited for this moment where kind of things came together that I went back and stopped off at Blue Bottle over on like Berry Street, and I got a coffee, and I was so happy about having kind of come through this kind of design solution. And then another thing came to me, and I just had this flash where I was like, wouldn't a book be great if you had this huge dog, like a bloodhound, on the cover with a really cute name? And that was it. That was my idea. And I was like, oh my God, like 2 moments of inspiration in one day. And look, here is that cover 3 years later. It kind of came to be. And so I'm there on the sidewalk. Rain on me. I'm feeling so happy. And I get back on my bike and I come over the Williamsburg Bridge again. And this image sort of kind of started to take shape, like not just the idea of big dog with a cute name, but I was just like, how, what's inside us is often different from what's outside, and how what is inside us grows. And so kind of like the seed of an idea started taking place. And so when I kind of came back over the bridge, I really actually had this book. And it's a very simple book where it's about a big dog. Maybe it's me, and she's sitting around, she's dreaming, and she's, what do dogs dream about? I think I was saying recently, maybe they dream about rabbits, but I think that she's a bloodhound. She's dreaming about singing and dancing and all these things. And she kind of dreams, and she eats, and she dreams some more, and she naps, and she doesn't do much. And so and this was kind of a shout out to Ferdinand, which is a favorite book of mine growing up. There she is under a tree, and she's dreaming, and you sort of sense things that are changing inside her a little. And then, so not much really happens in this book, but then 2/3 of the way through the book, everything happens. She gives birth. And there are 4 wordless spreads. I'm a fan of wordless spreads now. And out come these 7 beautiful little puppies, and she's exhausted and she's happy. And she looks one right in the eye. Speaking of my Ferdinand kind of shout out, there's a beautiful Jerry Pinkney moment in Lion and Mouse where they're kind of looking at each other. And so I have that moment, and there it is. And these puppies, she raises them up, and then that's the end of the book. It's a very simple book. For this book, I talked a lot with Alexandra Horwitz, who's a professor up at Barnard in the dog cognition lab. And because I wanted to get the birth right, I wanted to get all the kind of the dog behavior right, like the circling behavior things they do. And like that, the dogs are amazing. They're licking life into their puppies. They're also helped by a human. I can't draw humans. I'm terrible at that. I'm also terrible at hands, but the hands that are helping this dog Emma give birth I modeled them on Barack Obama's hands, because his hands are very, strong and elegant. And so hands, again, not very good at those. But so I got her help, Alexandra Horwitz's help. And I really just talked a lot with Elise, who's my wife. I talked with other friends who have given birth, because I haven't. And I really wanted to kind of, treat this with respect and really just kind of seeing Elise, my wife, give birth was incredibly powerful for me as a witness. And I wanted to kind of get across that respect and that seeing her strength and just being kind of curious about that moment and about the whole process of, being pregnant. Because it's not something I know, but I really wanted to kind of talk to that. I mean, I do know, though, for me, just seeing her do that was huge. And that first moment of holding my daughter completely changed me. So I kind of wanted to talk about that in this book. I think if anybody who knows me knows that I kind of am a little contrarian, and I think children's books can be a little too simplistic. And so I'm cranky about books, and I often want to take a different take on it. So like when I did a farm book, I really wanted to kind of go against cute farm books. And when I did Big Cat, Little Cat, I wanted to talk about death seriously. I kind of want to respect readers, and I just don't want to talk down to kids. And so in the same way, my hope with Emma is that I want to kind of celebrate life and celebrate birth and look, we're all born. We are all born, and birth is natural. And I wanted to kind of be just kind of cool about it and respect children as readers and not kind of, again, talk down to them. So that's kind of my hope for this book. I mean, maybe I'm being I guess I'm being deep with this because I'm talking to you guys and you're librarians, but that's what I was trying to get across. But if I'm being too deep, this is also just about puppies. I just want to show I was able to do a lot of research and hang out with these bloodhound puppies. Oh, it's in black and white. You can't really see them, but I spent a whole couple days these are the puppies that are trying to get into my backpack. They were adorable. It was hard to sketch them. They were eating my pencils. And so, yeah, I love the whole process of this book. It was meaningful to me. I loved making it with my editors. They were wonderful. And Macmillan is so great. I think I've said this before, but they are going to give bloodhound puppies to everybody who gets this book, and they'll put them in, no, they're not, but I dare to dream. Thumbs up. We're gonna give away puppies. So again, this is Emma, and again, I just absolutely loved making it, and I hope you like reading it.
Thank you, Elisha. I will say that I definitely have the authority to agree to give away puppies to everybody. No, we're very excited for you all to see Emma and just this beautiful book that I think will really stand out and last the test of time. So thank you.
Here's hoping. Oh, and I should have shown the last. Yes, here's the last spread where she does give birth, and they're her puppies, and she goes back up to her tree.
Thank you so much, Emily and Elisha. This was so interesting. I love seeing the photos of the puppies in your process. Yeah, so thank you to you both, and thank you everyone in the audience who came and listened to us talk about our books for the winter 2024 season. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. I'm going to turn this over to Booklist so they can give the audience some final notes, and then we'll be off. So thank you and goodbye.
All right. Thank you so much, Elijah, Emily, and the entire MacKids team. We will stay tuned for our puppies. This was such a wonderful preview, and it's always such a treat to hear from all these wonderful authors virtually and in person. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, title list, slide presentation, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Next slide, please. Between January 1st and August 31st, 2023, ALA's Office for Intellectual Freedom documented challenges to 1,915 unique titles, an increase of 20% from the same reporting period in 2022. Join the fight to help protect the freedom to read by supporting the Unite Against Book Bans campaign and visit their website, uniteagainstbookbans.org, for resources, toolkits, merchandise to donate, and more. Next slide, please. And remember that you can utilize book lists to support your library's collection development choices with reviews backed by the ALA. We have a special webinar subscription offer, and don't forget that your subscription dollars help ALA advocate on behalf of libraries, assisting those facing an unprecedented number of book challenges. Email us at info@booklessonline.com for more information. And final slide, please. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our special author and illustrator guests, and to the entire MacKids team, Elise, Mary, and Ryan, and of course to our sponsor, the MacKids School and Library team. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.